Feeling watched. Science says you're right. This uncanny ability has deep evolutionary roots. Our ancestors who were hypervigilant to potential predators had a survival advantage. The modern paradox is that we still feel watched even in empty rooms with no possible observers. Studies show this primal mechanism can trigger false alarms. Our brains are wired to err on the side of caution. Missing a real threat is far more costly than creating a false alarm about being watched. This explains why the feeling persists in modern settings. Researchers have documented this phenomenon across cultures and demographics. The effect isn't limited to specific personality types or age groups. In fact, even infants show measurable physiological responses when being watched, suggesting this ability develops very early in human life and operates at a subconscious level. The accuracy of this detection is remarkable. In controlled experiments, participants could correctly identify when being watched from behind with startling consistency. The effect remains powerful even when observers are hidden or when participants know they might be observed. This suggests the mechanism operates outside our conscious awareness. What's particularly fascinating is how this ability functions without direct visual confirmation. Participants report feeling watched even when their eyes are closed or when they're facing away from the observer. This suggests the mechanism uses multiple sensory inputs and operates through pattern recognition rather than literal line-of-sight detection. The evolutionary advantage of this ability is clear. Our ancestors who could detect predators watching from a distance had more time to prepare defenses. This explains why the feeling is strongest when we sense eyes on us from behind. Our evolutionary system treats such scenarios as high-threat situations requiring immediate attention. Modern research has confirmed this ancient mechanism operates at a subconscious level. Brain imaging studies show specific neural pathways activate when we sense being watched, even before we consciously register the feeling. These pathways include areas associated with threat detection and social awareness, highlighting the social dimension of this primal response. Interestingly, this ability isn't limited to human observers. Studies show we can detect being watched by animals and even realistic mannequins with human-like features. This suggests our detection system responds to patterns of awareness rather than specifically human characteristics. The mechanism appears designed to identify any focused attention directed our way. The phantom gaze effect explains many everyday experiences. That feeling you get when someone is about to walk through a door just as you're approaching it. The sudden awareness when someone's looking at your phone screen. These aren't coincidences. They're the modern manifestations of an ancient survival mechanism operating beneath our conscious awareness. What's truly remarkable is how this ancient mechanism continues to shape our modern behavior. Even when we know we're alone in a room, the feeling of being watched can still trigger physiological responses. Our bodies prepare for potential threat even when our conscious minds know we're safe. This disconnect between subconscious and conscious awareness reveals how deeply ingrained this ability is. In the early 1970s, a curious experiment began that would challenge our understanding of human perception. J. Michael Williams wondered if people could sense when someone was staring at them from behind. Williams designed a simple yet elegant experiment. Participants sat alone in a room while an observer stood silently behind them. The critical twist. Sometimes the observer was present, sometimes not, creating an unpredictable test of sensory perception. The procedure required participants to indicate whenever they felt being watched. No visual cues were possible since the observer remained completely hidden from view. This eliminated any chance of detecting movement, breathing, or other physical signals that might trigger the sensation. What Williams discovered astonished the scientific community. 80% of participants accurately detected when they were being observed, even though no visual or auditory signals could explain their ability. The results suggested something extraordinary about human perception. To verify these subjective reports, Williams incorporated physiological measurements. He attached sensors to participants' skin to monitor conductance, which typically increases during emotional arousal or stress. The data revealed significant physiological changes precisely when eye contact occurred. The most remarkable finding was the timing of these physiological responses. Participants showed changes in skin conductance a fraction of a second before they consciously reported feeling watched. This suggested their bodies detected the gaze before their minds registered the sensation. Williams hypothesized that humans might possess an unconscious sensitivity to electromagnetic fields or subtle air disturbances caused by another person's gaze. His research opened doors to understanding perception beyond conventional sensory channels, challenging established neuroscience paradigms. We upload videos like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Television. Nearly 2 decades later, biologist Rupert Sheldrake replicated Williams' experiments with intriguing results. Sheldrake, known for controversial theories on morphic resonance, claimed to have confirmed the phenomenon while suggesting it might represent a form of extended human perception. Sheldrake's interpretation sparked fierce debate in scientific circles. His suggestion that the phenomenon might involve psychic abilities or some form of non-local consciousness challenged materialist assumptions about human perception and consciousness, dividing researchers along ideological lines. Your brain is constantly scanning for eyes, even when none are present. The amygdala and superior temporal sulcus fire rapidly at the slightest hint of a gaze. These ancient structures evolved to protect us from predators watching from afar. They don't care about false alarms. Missing a threat could mean death. This primitive wiring still governs how you navigate modern spaces today. The brain's gaze detection system works like a high-tech radar. It processes even peripheral cues, shoulder angle, head tilt, shadow direction as potential watching eyes. These false alarms cost nothing evolutionarily, while missing a real threat could be fatal. That's why your mind errs on the side of caution, making you feel watched in empty rooms. Chronic anxiety or past trauma can amplify this primal response. The brain's alarm system stays stuck in the on position, creating a persistent sense of being watched. Every shadow becomes a potential observer. Every quiet moment feels suspicious. This isn't a conscious choice. It's your survival mechanism running on high alert without a proper off switch. The mirror neuron system adds another layer to this phenomenon. When you imagine being watched, your brain instinctively models what the observer might see. This creates a feedback loop. You feel watched, so you imagine others watching you, which reinforces the feeling. It's as if your mind creates ghost observers to complete the social circuit. This primitive surveillance system works in fractions of a second. The superior temporal sulcus detects eye direction before you even consciously register seeing eyes. It's like having an invisible security guard in your skull, constantly scanning for threats. This rapid processing gave our ancestors critical milliseconds to react to predators watching from hiding. The brain treats potential watching eyes as an immediate priority. Other stimuli might wait for processing, but a possible observer demands instant attention. This explains why you can't help but notice someone staring, even from the corner of your vision. Your ancient survival circuits haven't learned that most modern stares are accidental glances. Even when you know you're alone, the brain may still generate the feeling of being watched. This happens when environmental cues like a flickering light or moving shadow trigger the ancient detection system. The mind fills in the blanks with the most threatening interpretation. Eyes watching you. It's a neural shortcut that saved our ancestors but haunts us today. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between real and imagined watching. When you feel those phantom eyes, your stress response kicks in just as if someone were truly staring. This explains why being watched, even when only in your mind, makes you nervous. Your body can't tell the difference between a real observer and your brain's creation of one. Chronic trauma fundamentally rewires this system. Survivors often report feeling constantly watched. Even in safe spaces, the brain's alarm circuits become hypersensitive, interpreting normal stimuli as threats. This creates a terrifying reality where the world feels perpetually surveilled, not because of external threats, but because of internal neural patterns that refuse to calm down. The mirror neuron system creates a strange duality in this process. When you imagine being watched, you simultaneously model what an observer might see. This creates a virtual audience in your mind's eye. It's as if your brain creates ghost observers to complete the social circuit, making you feel both watched and watching at the same time. Even empty storefronts seem to watch us as we pass by. Those mannequins aren't just displays, they're psychological sentries. Retailers discovered decades ago that the phantom gaze effect directly correlates with reduced shoplifting. When shoppers feel watched, they unconsciously modify behavior. It's why high-end stores often place mannequins with exaggerated eye contact in critical aisles. But it goes deeper than plastic figures. Security cameras, real or fake, create measurable physiological changes in people nearby. Even when we know those red lights are just dummies, our amygdala doesn't get the memo. Studies show heart rates subtly increase and decision-making shifts when we sense surveillance, regardless of whether the cameras are functional. This explains why banks and airports maintain visible camera arrays even in low-crime areas. Now consider the digital landscape. Social media platforms weaponize this instinct with precision algorithms. Those typing indicators aren't just status updates, they're deliberate psychological triggers. When you see those dots, your brain floods with the same chemicals as when someone stares at you in person. This explains why messaging apps deliberately delay these indicators to maximize user engagement. It's a carefully calibrated phantom gaze designed to keep us hooked. The most chilling applications appear in state surveillance systems. When citizens feel watched, they naturally self-censor. This psychological effect explains why visible surveillance cameras in public spaces correlate with reduced dissent. People aren't afraid of getting caught. They're responding to the phantom gaze. The effect is so powerful that some governments intentionally make surveillance systems visible while knowing they capture little actual crime. The psychological deterrence is the true goal. The paradox deepens when we consider how this instinct protects us. In primitive environments, detecting a predator's gaze could mean life or death. Today, our brains still trigger that ancient alarm, even when the predator is just a mannequin or a blinking light. This evolutionary mismatch creates vulnerabilities that marketers, platforms, and governments exploit with alarming effectiveness. We're hardwired to feel watched, making us susceptible to phantom gaze manipulation. Retail psychologists discovered specific placement patterns maximize the effect. Mannequins with direct eye contact positioned at aisle intersections create maximum phantom gaze impact. The optimal angle is precisely empath-Lima degrees, just enough to trigger the gaze detection without being fully visible. This explains why high-theft items are often placed where these psychological sentries stand guard. It's not about what people see, but what they feel seeing. The financial incentives are staggering. Stores with strategically placed phantom watchers report theft rates empath-null lower than control stores. This psychological defense costs virtually nothing yet creates a force field around merchandise. The most effective displays incorporate subtle movement, swaying mannequins or rotating displays, that mimics human behavior. Our brains can't easily dismiss movement as inanimate, creating an even stronger surveillance illusion that dealers would be thieves. Security companies have turned phantom gaze into a science. The optimal camera placement isn't about coverage. It's about psychological impact. Studies show that cameras positioned at eye level, with direct visual paths through a space, create the strongest deterrent effect. Even when people know cameras are fake, the placement matters. A camera high on a wall feels less threatening than one at eye level staring directly at the path of movement. This explains the deliberate placement strategies in public spaces. The psychological impact extends beyond theft prevention. Retailers discovered that phantom gaze actually improves customer behavior. Shoppers move more deliberately, examine products more thoroughly, and linger longer in stores where they feel watched. This explains why luxury brands often create the illusion of being observed. Customers subconsciously associate this feeling with higher value. It's a paradoxical effect. The more we feel watched, the more willing we are to spend. Social media platforms have perfected phantom gaze manipulation. Features like online now indicators and typing prompts trigger the same neurological responses as actual human gaze. When you see those dots, your brain releases dopamine as if someone were directly addressing you. This explains why messaging apps deliberately introduce delays, creating maximum psychological impact. The effect is so powerful that some platforms use these cues even when there's no actual interaction. That feeling of being watched even when you're alone isn't just imagination. It's a survival mechanism your brain can't fully shut off. But you can consciously control how you respond to it. The first step is recognizing the feeling as a signal, not a fact. Ask yourself, what actual evidence do I have right now? This simple question begins the process of cognitive reframing. Consider how your environment might be amplifying these false alarms. A corner where shadows gather, a mirror reflecting your own image unexpectedly. Even the silence in a room can trigger ancient vigilance circuits. These aren't just aesthetic choices, they're psychological triggers. By redesigning your spaces to eliminate ambiguous stimuli, you can reduce the frequency of these phantom gaze experiences without suppressing your awareness. There's a cognitive bias at work here called the spotlight effect. We consistently overestimate how much attention others pay to us. In a classic experiment, students wearing embarrassing t-shirts thought at least half their peers would notice. In reality, fewer than 10% did. This misinterpretation extends to our perception of being watched. The more anxious we feel, the more we project our self-consciousness outward, mistaking our own awareness for someone else's gaze. What if instead of fighting this ancient mechanism, we could transform it? The feeling of being watched can become a powerful tool for self-accountability. Imagine using that internal watcher as your own personal guide. When you feel those phantom eyes, channel that energy into focused action rather than anxiety. This isn't about suppressing the sensation but redirecting its purpose. The surveillance that once triggered fear can now inspire integrity. The cognitive reframing process requires consistent practice. When that familiar feeling arises, pause and identify the physical sensations. The tension in your shoulders, the quickening breath, the scanning of your surroundings. Name these sensations without judgment. Then consciously shift your focus to concrete evidence. Is there an actual person in sight? What sounds can you verify? This moment-by-moment calibration helps recalibrate your perception from alarm to awareness. Environmental design plays a crucial role in managing these phantom watchers. Consider how retail spaces deliberately position mirrors and windows to create the impression of being observed. You can apply this understanding to your personal spaces. Strategic lighting eliminates shadowy corners where imagination runs wild. Background noise from a fan or white noise machine can fill silence that might otherwise trigger vigilance. These aren't about eliminating awareness but reducing false triggers. The spotlight effect extends beyond physical spaces into our digital lives. Social media platforms deliberately create the illusion of being watched through features like typing indicators and notification sounds. Each like and comment reinforces the feeling that your actions are under constant surveillance. Recognizing this engineered environment allows you to consciously step back. You can use digital mindfulness techniques to reduce the psychological impact of these manufactured gazes. Trauma and anxiety can amplify these natural surveillance mechanisms. When the brain has experienced genuine threats, it develops hypersensitivity to potential danger signals. This means the feeling of being watched might be more intense for those with trauma histories. The good news is that the same reframing techniques remain effective, though they may require more consistent practice. Understanding this connection helps avoid self-blame and instead focuses on skill development. The amygdala's rapid response to potential threats creates this phantom gaze effect. But you can train your brain to respond differently. Mindfulness meditation specifically targets this ancient warning system. By observing the feeling without reacting, you create new neural pathways. Over time, the initial spike of anxiety becomes a moment of neutral awareness. This isn't about eliminating the sensation but changing your relationship with it from alarm to information. Hi everyone! Quick reminder. Subscribe for high-quality daily content. Sparkles subscribe now before the next video. We have a special upload tomorrow. High voltage.